So let's go back to the 1970s when some questionable choices were made. First of all, hairstyles. Second of all, objectively terrible quantities of hairspray. And third, CFC, chlorofluorocarbons, man-made chemicals that were used as propellant in aerosol spray cans. And C, turns out these CFCs were a problem because they were destroying the ozone layer. Now, I'm sure most of you have heard of the ozone layer, but why does that matter? Well, quite simply, the ozone layer is Earth's sunscreen, and it's really fragile. If you could take all of the ozone, which is mostly about 10 to 20 miles up above our heads, and compress it down to the surface of the Earth, it would form a thin shell only about 2 pennies thick, about an eighth of an inch. And that thin shell does an amazing amount of work though. It filters out more than 90% of the harmful UV radiation coming from the sun. And while I'm sure many of you enjoy that suntan that you get from the remaining 10%, it causes a lot of problems. Cataract, damage to crops, damage to the immune systems, and also skin cancer. It's not an exaggeration to say that the threat to the ozone layer is a threat to human safety. And actually, around human safety that motivated the invention of CFCs in the first place. You see, in the early days of refrigeration, refrigerators used toxic and flammable chemicals, like propane and ammonia. For good reason, the refrigeration industry wanted a safe alternative, and they found that in 1928, when a scientist named Thomas Mitchell synthesized the first commercially viable CFC. And in fact, Mitchell famously inhaled CFCs and blew out a candle to demonstrate at a scientific conference that they were safe and non-flammable. And in fact, as a scientist, I can tell you there's no way you can get away with that kind of antic today. I mean, wow. But really, at that time, CFCs were a really remarkable invention. They allowed that what we now know as modern day refrigeration and air conditioning and other things. So it wasn't actually until over 40 years later, in the 1970s, when scientists realized that the CFC would break down high in atmosphere and damage the ozone layer. And this finding really set off a lot of public concern. It led ultimately to the banning of CFC usage in the set and a few other countries in 1978. Now, the story doesn't end there because CFCs were used as much more than just spray cans. In 1985, scientists discovered the Antarctic ozone hole. And this was a truly alarming discovery. Scientists did not expect it this all. Before the Antarctic ozone hole, scientists expected maybe 5 to 10% reduction in ozone over a century.